Hello everyone, my name is Ben, and today I'm going to show you how to play the Legend of the Five Rings living card game from Fantasy Flight Games. Whether you're new to the series and are curious about how the game works, or you're a returning fan from the CCG and want to see what's changed, this is the video for you. So let's jump right in. Legend of the Five Rings takes place in the land of Rokugan, a fantasy world inspired by feudal Japanese culture and mythology. In the game, you will represent one of Rokugan's 7 major clans, vying for glory, honor, and favor from the Emperor. In Legend of the Five Rings, or L5R for short, there are 3 ways to win. You can win through combat by attacking and breaking your opponent's province containing their stronghold, or you can win through honor, whereby you gain enough honor to prove yourself the most honorable clan in the land, and finally, you can win through dishonoring your opponent, causing them to lose honor and be disgraced for all to see. To start off, let's see how the game is set up. First, create a general pool of tokens that players can use. This will include honor tokens, fate tokens, honored and dishonored tokens, the imperial favor, and the 5 elemental ring tokens. Place the rings and piles of tokens alongside the play area to create the token pool. Also, give each player an honor dial, which they will use to bid their honor for benefits throughout the game. Next, randomly determine a first player. That player will start the game with the first player token, and the second player will start the game with 1 fate token. Fate is used as the primary resource of the game, representing your clan's karma and destiny. It will be spent in order to recruit your characters for battle and play cards from your hand. Next, you will shuffle your 2 decks of cards. Each player has a dynasty deck, which contains the different characters in your clan as well as your clan's holdings, and that is placed to the left of your player area. Each player also has a conflict deck, which contains events, special equipment, and other tricks for you to use to swing battles in your favor. You'll place the conflict deck on the right-hand side of your player area. Next, you will look at the 5 province cards that you have chosen for your deck. Provinces represent various circumstances and occurrences that happen in the lands that your clan controls. Each province has a strength in the upper left corner, which is a defensive value used to resist attacks from your opponent to prevent it from breaking, as well as a special ability that you can use if your opponent attacks that province. You will choose one of these provinces to protect your stronghold and place it face down above your dynasty deck. Then, place the other 4 province cards face down between your dynasty and conflict deck in any order. Next, you will place your stronghold on your player board on top of the province you selected for it. Your stronghold is the cornerstone of your deck, as it declares which clan you've chosen to represent, as well as giving you a special ability that you can use throughout the game. The stronghold also tells you how much honor you will start the game with. If, over the course of the game, you're able to gain 25 honor, you immediately win the game. However, if your honor ever drops to 0, you immediately lose and your opponent wins instead. The stronghold also determines the amount of fate that you will receive each turn. This is the primary way that you will be getting fate over the course of the game, although there are a few other ways to gain fate as the game goes on, as we'll see. Your stronghold also determines how much influence that you have to spend during deck building to include cards in your conflict deck that don't belong to your clan, though we'll discuss deck building toward the end of this video. Finally, the stronghold also has a bonus province strength that it grants to the province protecting your stronghold to give it some extra defense. Over the course of the game, your opponent will have opportunities to attack your provinces, and you will be able to attack theirs as well. If your opponent's attacks are strong enough, they will be able to break your provinces, and if 3 of your 4 central provinces are broken, your stronghold becomes vulnerable, and your opponent will be able to attack that province directly. If they're able to break that province as well, then they immediately win the game. Now that you've placed your decks, provinces, and stronghold card, it's time to draw cards. First, take the top 4 cards of your dynasty deck and place them face down on top of each of your 4 central provinces. At this time, you may secretly look at those cards and decide if you want to mulligan any of them. In order to perform a mulligan, set aside the cards that you don't want, replace them with cards from the top of your dynasty deck face down, and then shuffle the set-aside cards back into the Dynasty deck. Once you've performed your mulligan, you may not look at your face-down Dynasty cards again for the rest of the game. Next, draw 4 cards from your conflict deck to form your hand. Again, you will have an opportunity to mulligan. Just like with the Dynasty cards, you can set aside any number of your conflict cards, draw cards to replace them, then shuffle the set-aside cards back into the conflict deck. Finally, the last thing to do before beginning the game is to create your honor pool. Take honor tokens from the general pool equal to the amount of honor shown on your stronghold. And with that, you're ready to begin the game. Each game of L5R takes place over the course of several rounds, and each round contains 5 phases, the first of which is the Dynasty phase, where you will recruit new characters for battle and raise new holdings. At the start of the Dynasty phase, each player, starting with the first player, will take the Dynasty cards that are face down on top of their provinces and turn them face up, starting with the leftmost province. Once both players have done this, they will collect Fate from the Fate pool as indicated by their strongholds. Fate carries over from round to round, so if you don't spend all your Fate this round, you can keep the leftovers to spend next round. Also, remember that since the second player started the game with 1 Fate, they will already have that 1 extra Fate to spend to make up for going second. Then, starting with the first player and alternating back and forth, players will take turns recruiting face-up cards from their provinces into play into their home area, or taking any other actions that they might want to do. So let's take a closer look at these Dynasty cards. Most of the cards in your Dynasty deck are going to be characters. Each character has a name, a clan loyalty, a fate cost, a military skill, a political skill, a glory value, some number of traits, and usually some kind of special ability. We'll get to what all these things do soon enough, but the important thing to pay attention to in the Dynasty phase is the fate cost. In order to recruit a character, you first need to spend fate equal to that character's fate cost, then move it from your province into your home area. Then, after paying their fate cost, you can spend extra fate from your fate pool to put that many fate tokens on that character. The reason this is important is because at the end of each round, any character that does not have fate tokens on it will be discarded from play, and then 1 fate token is removed from everybody else remaining. Thus, when you play a character, you also have to decide how many rounds you want to have that character be active for, because once they run out of fate tokens, they'll be discarded at the end of the round. In the world of L5R, nothing is permanent and everything is always changing. Life moves on, and sometimes characters retire from battle or are called off to other duties, so you will need to continuously replenish your army in order to attack your opponent as the game progresses. Some characters are unique, indicated by a special circular symbol next to their name. You may only ever have 1 copy of each unique character in play at a time. If you have a unique character in play and flip another copy of that unique character in one of your provinces, then instead of recruiting that character, you can spend one of your actions during the Dynasty phase to discard the copy of that character in your provinces to give the copy of that character that is in play an extra fate token. Characters enter play readied, meaning they are oriented straight up and down. Over the course of each round, characters may become bowed as the result of engaging in conflicts or due to other effects. When a character is bowed, it is rotated 90 degrees. Characters that are bowed do not add their skill value to conflicts and cannot be declared as attackers or defenders in future conflicts until they become readied again. After you've recruited a character, you will immediately refill that province with an unseen face-down card from the top of your Dynasty deck. You can only recruit cards that are face-up, and typically these face-down cards don't get flipped face-up until the next round. So in this way you have a limit on the number of Dynasty cards you can play each turn. In general, if a card ever leaves a province, it is always immediately refilled with a face-down card from the Dynasty deck. The other type of card you will find in your Dynasty deck are holdings. Unlike characters, you do not need to pay a fate cost when you get a holding. Instead, it becomes active as soon as you flip it face up. A holding adds a bonus strength to the province that it is on, and also gives the player a powerful special ability. During the Dynasty phase, players take turns back and forth, recruiting whichever characters they want and taking other actions, if they have other actions available from cards, until both players have passed. Once you pass during the Dynasty phase, you cannot take any more actions. However, the first player to pass gains 1 extra fate as a bonus. Once both players have passed, the Dynasty phase ends, and players move on to the second phase of the game, which is the Draw phase. In this phase, players will decide how honorably they intend to act during the conflicts to come by bidding their honor in order to draw more conflict cards. To do this, players will use their honor dials to secretly choose a number between 1 and 5. Once each player has chosen their number, they reveal their choices simultaneously. If players bid different amounts, then the player who bid the higher amount will give honor to the other player equal to the difference between the two bids. For example, if the Lion player bid 5 and the Crane player bid 1, the Lion player would give the Crane player 4 honor. However, if both bids are the same, then players do not exchange honor. Once any honor has exchanged hands if needed, players draw cards from their conflict decks equal to the number that they bid. In this way, you may gain access to more tricks than your opponent, but in doing so, you may be acting less honorably than them. Something to note about drawing from both the conflict deck and the Dynasty deck is that if you ever need to draw a card from one of those decks, but are unable to because the deck is empty, you don't lose the game. Instead, you immediately lose 5 honor, then shuffle your discard pile and create a new deck, and then continue drawing as normal. Once players have drawn their cards, it's time to move to the third phase of the game, the conflict phase. In the conflict phase, players will be able to initiate up to 2 different conflicts against their opponent's provinces in alternating fashion. Once again, the first player has the first opportunity to act. Before each of these attacks, there is an action window where players can take actions in an alternating fashion, starting with the first player. Once both players have passed consecutively, the player whose turn it is to declare a conflict can choose to do so, or pass on the opportunity, in which case their opponent would now have an opportunity to declare a conflict. If you pass your first conflict opportunity, then you will only have one other opportunity to declare a conflict this round. If a player does choose to initiate a conflict, they must make a number of choices about how they wish to perform the attack. First, they have to choose which of their opponent's provinces they wish to attack. A player may only attack one of their opponent's 4 central provinces, unless 3 of those 4 provinces are already broken, in which case they may attack the Stronghold province. A province that has already been broken cannot be attacked again. Second, they have to choose if the conflict will be a military or political conflict. Players may only initiate, at most, 1 of each type of conflict per conflict phase. Third, they will need to choose which of the 5 elemental rings they will be using to guide their attack. Each elemental ring will give the attacker a special bonus effect if they win the attack. If you win an attack with the air ring, you may either take 1 honor from your opponent or gain 2 honor from the honor pool. If you win an attack with the earth ring, you may draw 1 card from your conflict deck and randomly discard one of your opponent's conflict cards from their hand. If you win an attack with the water ring, you may choose any character and ready it if it is bowed, or you may choose any character that has no fate on it and bow it. If you win an attack with the void ring, you may choose any character and remove 1 fate token from it. And finally, if you win an attack with the fire ring, you may choose any character in play and either honor it or dishonor it. Honored and dishonored characters are indicated with the appropriate honored or dishonored token. When a character is honored, they add their glory value to both their military and political skill, giving them a great bonus. However, a dishonored character will subtract their glory value from their skills. Also, if an honored character ever leaves play or gets discarded, that character's controller will gain 1 honor. And likewise, if a dishonored character leaves play, that character's controller will lose 1 honor. If a character that is already honored gets dishonored, then instead of becoming dishonored, they will simply lose their honored status and become ordinary again. Likewise, if a dishonored character would become honored, they would instead discard the dishonored token. When you make your choice of ring, you will choose one of the 5 double-sided ring tokens along the side of the play area, turn it to the side representing the conflict type you're choosing, red for military and blue for political, and then place the ring on the province you are attacking. Also, if there is any fate sitting on that ring, you immediately collect it and add it to your fate pool. Once you have chosen the province you're attacking, the conflict type, and the ring type of the conflict, you'll finally declare which of your characters you're sending in on the attack. Only characters that are currently readied may be declared as attackers, and they must also have a skill value for the relevant conflict type. If a character has a dash for their skill in the conflict type, they cannot be chosen as a participant in the conflict. However, if they have at least 0 or more for their skill, they can be declared as a participant. Once attacking players are declared and locked in, then, if the province that is being attacked is still face down, that province is flipped over and revealed, and will stay face up for the rest of the game. Provinces may have an effect that happens as soon as they are revealed, or they may simply give the defender some other special ability that they can use during that conflict. Then, the defending player will choose from their own readied characters and assign any number of them as defenders against the attack. After defenders are declared, the battle begins, with players taking alternating actions to swing the tide of battle in their favor, starting with the defending player first. These actions may include actions on characters you control, your holdings, and your stronghold, but more importantly, you can also play cards from your hand of conflict cards as well. Your conflict deck has 3 main types of cards: events, attachments, and characters. Events are single, one-time actions that can give you a powerful effect, such as boosting your military skill, or bowing your opponent's cards, or honoring or dishonoring characters, or any number of other effects. To play an event card, all you have to do is place the card in the play area, pay the card's fate cost, resolve the effect, and then discard the card to your conflict discard. Attachments are cards that can give characters special bonuses that last for longer than just the current conflict. They may increase military or political skill on the character you attach it to, or it might give them a new special ability. You can play attachments on any character, even your opponent's characters, because sometimes attachments might have negative effects that you want to give to your enemy. To play an attachment, you must pay its fate cost and then choose a character to attach it to. That character keeps that attachment until they are discarded, at which point the attachment is discarded as well. Finally, your conflict deck might also contain character cards. These characters are just like characters from your Dynasty deck, except that they are specifically designed to be in your conflict deck instead. During a conflict, you can play them directly into the current conflict as a surprise character your opponent wasn't expecting. Just like playing characters from your provinces, when you play a character from your hand, you pay its fate cost, and then you have the opportunity to pay extra fate to put that many extra fate tokens on that character if you desire. Players will take turns using actions and playing cards until both players pass consecutively. You may pass an action, but if your opponent takes another action after you pass, you can still continue to take actions after that if you like. The conflict does not end until both players pass one after another. As you take actions, be sure to keep track of how much total skill each player has among their participating characters on both sides of the conflict with the relevant skill type, and state it out loud after each action so that both players are aware of how each action might have changed the state of the current conflict. If a player has any bowed characters, those characters do not contribute their skill to the conflict. If the player has any bowed attachments, however, those attachments still do contribute their skill bonus to the conflict, as long as the attached character is not bowed. Once players have passed consecutively, then it's time to resolve the conflict. First, total up how much total skill each player has among their participating characters on their side of the conflict with the relevant skill. If the attacker's total skill is greater than 0 and is equal to or greater than the total skill of the defender, then the attacker wins the conflict, with the attacker winning ties. They will claim the ring they chose for the conflict into their pool of claimed rings, and at that time they may resolve the special bonus effect of that ring if they desire. If the attacker won the conflict and the difference between each player's total skill is greater than or equal to the strength of the province they were attacking, that province is broken. For example, suppose the Lion player made a military attack against the Crane player at their province called Night Raid, which has a province strength of 4. At the end of the conflict, suppose the Lion player counts 10 total military skill in the conflict, while the Crane only counts 4. The Lion player would win the conflict because they had the higher total military skill, since this was a military conflict. Furthermore, because the difference in total skills was greater than or equal to the province's strength, that province is also broken as a result of the conflict. When a province is broken, the province card is rotated 180 degrees to indicate that it is broken, and the attacking player may discard the card that was on that province, replacing it with a new face-down card. If, at the end of the conflict, the attacker's total skill is greater than 0, and the defending player has no characters participating in the conflict, either because they declared no defenders at the start of the conflict, or due to effects that sent all their defenders home, then they will lose 1 honor for failing to defend their lands. However, if, at the end of a conflict, the defender has more total skill than the attacker, the defender wins the conflict and claims the ring into their claimed ring pool. However, the defender does not get to trigger that ring's special bonus effect for winning on defense. If both players end the conflict and have 0 skill, the conflict is considered a tie and neither side wins. In this case, the ring is returned to the unclaimed ring pool for someone to choose again in a later conflict. After a winner is declared and any ring effects have been resolved, all participating characters return to their owner's home areas bowed. That conflict has now ended, and if either player still has more opportunities to declare conflicts, the process repeats, with priority passing to the opposite player, starting with an action window for those players to take actions before the conflict, and then for the player whose priority it is to choose if they wish to declare a conflict or pass. After both players have had 2 opportunities to declare a conflict or pass, then there is one last action window where players may take any last-minute actions in alternating order. After that, it's time to declare who claims the Imperial favor for this round. The Emperor will give their favor to whoever was the most glorious in battle. This is determined by counting the number of claimed rings in each player's claimed ring pool, and adding that number to the total amount of glory remaining on unbowed characters that player controls. Whoever has the higher total will claim the Imperial favor, which will give them a +1 skill bonus to either military or political conflicts during the next round. The player who wins the Imperial favor must decide which value to choose when they win it, and may not change it until Imperial favor is claimed during the next round. If the player who won the Imperial favor already controlled the Imperial favor, they may choose to keep it on the side that they chose previously, or they may choose to change it to the opposite side. If both players are tied in their glory count between claimed rings and unbowed glory, then the Imperial favor stays in its current state, whether that means it is unclaimed or already claimed by one player in its current conflict type. Once the Imperial favor has been determined, the conflict phase ends, and the game progresses to the 4th phase, called the Fate phase. During the Fate phase, your characters feel the pull of destiny as time marches onward. First, all characters that have no fate tokens on them are discarded to their appropriate discard piles. If any of them have attachments on them, those attachments are discarded as well. If any of them are honored, that character's controller will gain 1 honor, or if that character is dishonored, that character's controller will lose 1 honor. After discarding these characters, you will remove 1 fate token from all remaining characters that were not discarded. Next, place 1 fate token from the pool on each ring that was not claimed during the conflict phase. If a player chooses a ring with fate on it during the next conflict phase, they will immediately gain all the fate that is accrued on that ring into their personal fate pool. After fate is placed on all unclaimed rings, the fate phase ends and the last phase of the round, the regroup phase, begins. First, all cards are readied, including characters, attachments, and strongholds. Next, beginning with the first player, players may choose any face-up cards on their provinces that they wish to discard to be replaced with new face-down cards. If there are any face-up cards on broken provinces, those cards must be discarded. Next, return everyone's claimed rings to the unclaimed ring pool so that they will be available to choose for the next round. Lastly, the first player token is passed to the opposite player. Then, the regroup phase ends, and the game continues again from the Dynasty phase. Players will turn their face-down Dynasty cards face up, collect their fate income, and take turns recruiting new characters before moving to the draw phase, where they will bid honor to draw cards, and then move to the conflict phase once again to declare conflicts against each other. If a player ever breaks the province protecting their opponent's stronghold, they will immediately win the game. Or, if a player ever gains 25 honor into their honor pool, then they immediately win the game. However, if a player ever loses all honor in their honor pool, then they immediately lose the game, and their opponent wins the game. And that is the game of Legend of the Five Rings, the living card game. However, there are a few more rules I'd like to mention that will be useful for you to understand while playing the game, which I'll discuss now. First, there are some cards in L5R that can initiate duels. Duels represent a fight between two specific opposing characters and typically either uses military or political skill. The card that initiates the duel will determine which characters participate in the duel and which skill will be used to determine the outcome of the duel. To perform a duel, players will first look at the relevant skills of the participating characters. Then, they decide how honorably they want their character to fight in this duel. A character with weak skill may have to give up some honor if they want to have a chance to win the duel. Much like bidding during the draw phase, players will use their honor dials to secretly choose a number between 1 and 5, representing how much honor they are willing to give up to win the duel. Once both players have chosen their number, they reveal their bid simultaneously. Once again, whoever bid higher on the honor dial will give honor equal to the difference in bids to whoever bid lower. Then, players add the number that they bid to their character's relevant skill and compare final skill totals. The player who controls the character with the highest skill total wins the duel, and the other player loses the duel. If the skill totals are tied, neither player wins or loses the duel. If there is a winner, the winner gains the benefit defined by the card that initiated the duel, and similarly, the loser suffers any specified penalties. Then, the duel is complete. Another thing that is important to understand in Legend of the Five Rings is the way that actions, reactions, and interrupts work. You may notice that many cards have the word action, reaction, or interrupt written on them in bold text, followed by an effect. Cards marked as an action are actions that can be used in any action window, whether during a conflict, before a conflict, or during the Dynasty phase. A reaction is an effect that does not take an action to play and is instead something that you can do immediately after some effect triggers it. An interrupt is similar to a reaction, except that its effect can take place before the effect that triggered it resolves. Some interrupts can cancel the effects of the things that triggered them. Unless otherwise specified, each copy of an action, reaction, and interrupt may only be used one time per game round. In order to perform these effects, you must fulfill the prerequisites and costs listed on the card preceding the dash in the text box, and then you may resolve its effects. Some reaction and interrupt abilities have the word forced before them. Normally, reactions and interrupts are optional, but if it is forced, then they must occur. Finally, if you're like me, you're going to want to build and customize your own decks instead of just using the suggested starter decks that the core set recommends. To build your own deck for L5R, you must first choose a clan and one of their strongholds. Next, choose exactly 5 province cards for your deck. In the bottom right corner of all province cards, there is an elemental ring symbol. You must have exactly 1 province for each of the 5 rings. Also, you may only include province cards that already belong to your own clan or are neutral. Your Dynasty deck and Conflict deck must contain, at minimum, 40 cards each, and cannot contain more than 45 cards each. You may include up to 3 copies of a card by name between both of your decks. In your Dynasty deck, you are only allowed to include characters and holdings that belong to your chosen clan, or neutral cards that have no clan affiliation. In your Conflict deck, you may include cards that belong to your clan, neutral cards, and cards from no more than 1 other clan, as long as you pay the influence cost to add those cards to your deck. On your chosen stronghold, there is a number that indicates how much influence you have to spend during deck building, next to a symbol that looks like a bamboo stalk. At the bottom of most clan-specific conflict cards, you will see a number of these same symbols. The number of bamboo symbols on the bottom of these cards are that card's influence cost. To include a copy of that card in your deck, you must allocate that much influence from your total to that card. For example, if I am playing a dragon deck using the stronghold Mountains Anvil Castle, I have 10 influence to spend on conflict cards from one other clan. So if I choose Crab as the clan I wish to ally with, I can include Crab cards in my conflict deck by spending influence to bring them in. Suppose I wanted to add the Crab card Watch Commander to my dragon deck. Watch Commander costs 3 influence. So if I include a copy of Watch Commander in my Dragon conflict deck, I have 7 influence left over to spend on other Crab cards. I could add a second copy of Watch Commander for another 3 influence, leaving me with 4 influence remaining, and then 2 copies of Hruma Ambusher for 1 influence each, and 2 copies of Reprieve for 1 influence each, and that would use all of my influence, so that I would not be able to add any more Crab cards to my conflict deck. Some clan-specific cards do not have an influence cost listed, such as Way of the Crab. These cards are so core to the idea of that clan that you cannot include them in decks that do not match the clan. Finally, if you wish, you may choose a role for your deck. Adding a role is optional, and it gives you some interesting new deck building options. The 2 main types of roles are Keeper of a particular ring or Seeker of a particular ring. If you choose a Keeper role, you will have 3 extra influence with which you can use to deck build, and you will gain a bonus fate if you successfully defend against a conflict using your chosen ring. If you choose a Seeker role, then when selecting your provinces, you may include 2 provinces that share the same element type, instead of taking 1 province for each element, and you will get an extra fate when a province of the chosen ring type is revealed. If you choose a Seeker role, remember that you cannot include 2 copies of the same province by title. If you want to play an L5R organized play, then keep in mind that each clan has a specific role that they must choose. This role is chosen every year at the World Championship by the top player of each clan, and players must use that role in all sanctioned events. If you want to know what role your clan has chosen for the year, you can find out by checking Fantasy Flight's website, which I will link to in the description of this video. Those are all the gameplay rules that I wanted to mention in this video, and that should be plenty to get you into the game. If more specific rules questions come up as you play, be sure to refer to the rules reference on Fantasy Flight's website, which I've linked to you below. As a rule of thumb, remember the Jade Rule. The Jade Rule says that if there is ever a contradiction between the rules of the game and what a card says to do, the card's text takes precedence. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more LCG content in the future, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Until then, my name has been Ben, and I wish you happy gaming.